So in order to be able to do this class opener, you got to be familiar with the perfect square number list. And of course, you could write that down, create it by yourself. Just 1 times 1 is 1, 2 times 2 is 4, 3 times 3, 4 times 4, and so on and so on. So anyway, the square root of a perfect square number is a perfect answer. So the square root of 81 is 9. The square root of 4 is 2. The square root of 18, okay, so 18 is not a perfect square number. As you could see up here, 18 is not there on the perfect square number list, so it's not a perfect square number. You want to break it down with multiplication so you could get a perfect square number. So you're not going to say 6 times 3 because 6 is not up there and 3 is not up there. You want to use 9 times 2. So we're going to rewrite this as 9 times 2, and we're going to split the root. And of course, now we do have a perfect square number in here, and the square root of 9 is 3, and the square root of 2, you're just going to leave it. You can't break it down any further. It is simplified. Moving on to the next one, number 4. Whoops. So on number 4, we have 125. And of course, if we look at our perfect square number list up here, 125 is not on there, so it's not a perfect square number. And you want to rewrite it with multiplication to get a perfect square number. So 25 is a perfect square number. So we're going to rewrite it as 25 times 5. If you think about it, there's 5 quarters in $1.25. And we're going to split the root. And of course, now we could actually do the square root of 25. That's 5. There's no more square root. And we simply bring down the square root of 5 because you can't simplify that any further. Let's move on to number 5. The square root of 80. When you look at the perfect square number list above, obviously 80 is not up there, so you want to break it down with multiplication to get a perfect square number. Now, 4, the number 4 will work. That is a perfect square number. You could say 4 times 20. That'll give you 80. However, take a couple more seconds and look for a bigger perfect square number. Like 9 doesn't work. 16 actually does work. 16 times 5 is 80. Okay, if you're thinking, well, how am I going to know that? You could always use a calculator and try to divide 80 by 16, and you will have 16 times 5. That really is 80. So we're going to split the root, and we will have 4, because the square root of 16 is 4, and the square root of 5 is just brought down, so your answer is 4 square root of 5. Let's move on to number 6. Jumping to number 6. 6 is pretty easy. It does have a 3 on the outside being multiplied by the square root of 4. So you really have 3 times 2. Okay, 3 times 2, and that's really just 6. Again, the square root of 4 is 2. The 3 just came down, and then 3 times 2 is your final answer, 6. No more square root, of course. Over here, same thing. Bring down the 5, and then the square root of 9 is really 3. So the answer is 15. 5 times 3, 15. The nice, beautiful number 15. Number 8. We really have the 7 on the outside. You're going to bring that down. And then square root of 64, this right here is square root of 64, that's really 8. So you really have 7 times 8, so the answer is 56. Moving on to number 9. 3 times the square root of 12. Remember, this is multiplication, and the square root of 12, it's not a perfect square number, so you want to break it down with multiplication to get a perfect square number. So breaking 12 down to 6 times 2 would be pointless because 6 is not a perfect square, 2 is not a perfect square. So what we are going to rewrite it as is 4, that's a perfect square number, times 3. And we're going to split the root, and we're going to, of course, bring down the 3 that's out in the front. So the 3 is going to come down again. The square root of 4 is really 2, and there's multiplication between the two numbers, and the square root of 3 just comes down again. So my final answer, when I do 3 times 2 times square root of 3, I just multiply the 3 and the 2, and I'll get 6. Bring down the square root of 3, and that's my final answer, 6 square root of 3. Let's move on to number 10. Number 10, we have 4 square root of 50. Now, 50 is not a perfect square number, so you want to rewrite it with multiplication to get a perfect square number. So it would be pointless to do 5 times 10 because neither of those are perfect square numbers. But I am going to break it down to 25, that's a perfect square number, times 2, right? And when I split the root, I will be able to do the square root of 25, but let's not forget about the 4 that's out there in the front. So I really have 4 times the square root of 25, but we all know that the square root of 25 is really 5, so I really have 4 times 5, and of course I bring down the square root of 2. So 4 times 5 is 20. Bring down the square root of 2. That's your final answer for number 10. Let's take a look at number 11. Number 11, you have a negative 3 on the outside that's being multiplied with the square root of 32. So let's focus on the square root of 32. It's not a perfect square number, so you want to break it down with multiplication to get a perfect square number. A lot of us are going to say, oh, 4 times 8. 4 is a perfect square number. But remember, you want to use the highest perfect square number possible. So when I look at my perfect square numbers, I already know that 4 times 8 is 32, but try 9. 9 times something give you 32? No, it doesn't work. 16 times something. Yeah, 16 times 2 is 32. So you want to use the biggest perfect square number possible. So you do want to rewrite it as 16 times 2. Let's not forget that we're going to split the root. And let's not forget to bring down the negative 3 that you're going to multiply by. Okay. Now the square root of 16, that is 4. And let's not forget about that negative 3 that we're multiplying by. Bring it down and bring down the square root of 2 also. So your final answer is going to be negative 12 square root of 2. That's the final answer for number 11. Let's try number 12. Number 12. Okay, keep in mind that it's all pure multiplication. What do I mean by that? I have negative 2 times the square root of 2 times negative 3 times the square root of 8. So you could just rearrange things. Okay, so let's go negative 2 times negative 3 and then put times square root of 2 times square root of 8. Okay, now we also have the option, there's many rows to the same place. You could take this 8 and break it down to 4 times 2 and then continue working. But we could use the rule backwards. You guys remember the rule where we have the square root of a times b? That's really the square root of a times the square root of b. And we said we could use that rule backwards. The square root of a times the square root of b could be written as the square root of a times b written together under the square root. So we're going to use that rule right here. We're going to take the square root of 2 times the square root of 8, and we're going to put them together as 2 times 8. Now, why would I do that? Let me move this out of the way. Whoops. Okay, I'm not going to move it out of the way, but the reason why I put it together is because I will have a negative 2 times a negative 3 times the square root of 16, and the square root of 16 is 8. So we end up with negative 2 times negative 3, that's 6, times, now the square root of 16, that is 4, so 6 times 4 is 24, and that's my final answer for number 12.